Awesome. Well, good morning. Thanks to everybody for being up bright and early for the last day here of panel programming at SoundOff Summit. My name is Jess Arcand. I am the founder of Reverie Magazine. I am a publicist with Take Aim Media. So my work intersects quite a bit with both of you, our wonderful panelists today. I'm also a columnist at the CBC and a community radio host. And I'm so thrilled and honored to be on a panel with these two folks here who write for two of the biggest Canadian media music outlets in Canada, and talk about new media and the way it's changing, some things that are maybe the same, and also what are writers and editors covering right now in the music scene. So that's a little bit about me. I would love for both of you to introduce yourself and just say a little bit about what you do. Sydney, maybe you can start.
Okay, sure. My name is Sydney Brazil. I am social editor at Exclaim Media. I'm also a journalist by trade. So, on top of running the social media department for Exclaim Magazine, which is a national print and online publication, I do news, features, interviews, that sort of thing. I am also on the Polaris jury. I was on the grand jury this year that elected Eve Jarvis to win. And generally, I'm just a freelance journalist on top of that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Khagan Aslanov. I'm a music journalist. I work for Range Magazine and a few other publications in and out jazz and post trash. I'm also, an artist, a visual writer, a recovering musician. That's it. Yeah.
So I think you both can relate. Your inboxes are probably slammed every day. How do you mitigate, I guess, what you want to cover and what you consider to be newsworthy? And is the concept of newsworthiness changing, do you find, in the media landscape right now?
You want to take that one first?
No, you go first.
Okay. So there's actually been a big change in what we choose to cover now because of what we call the AI traffic apocalypse with news outlets, where basically, because now anytime you Google something, you get the AI overview. So instead of going to news publications and clicking on our site where we get ad revenue and traffic, people are just looking at the AI overview. So instead of writing, say, like a press release, regurgitating a press release that says, oh, this person is releasing this album at this time, we kind of have to editorialize it a bit because the AI conglomerate isn't going to sort of put our opinions in that thing. Like we've tried looking up what does Sydney Brazil think about the new Art Deco album or whatever, and it just doesn't take that information. So now instead of writing, fact-based things, we're writing more editorialized, opinion-based things. So if we like a song or we love an album, we'll staff pick it instead. If we don't like something, we'll write a little bit more about why we don't like it. And it gives us more backing in terms of our editorial voice. However, it's not great because it limits what we choose to cover.
How about you, Kagan, as far as newsworthiness is concerned?
I think it's a balancing act between writing about acts that might draw views and readership and something you might feel passionate about. Ideally, it crisscrosses together. Yeah, but it's sort of, I think, at least with more formalized publications, it's kind of the same relationship it was before the internet, where you pitch things to magazines and sometimes from bands pitching you to ask for coverage. And then the magazine gives you pitches as well. And then, you write so many things that are, good, but might necessarily be your exact aesthetic vein in order to get some credit, in order to pitch something you might feel very passionate about, or a very unknown band that might not draw anything that you want to get some exposure. Yeah. As far as what you said, it's I'm sort of I'm much, I would say, less involved in these kind of inner workings of things. So I'm to some degree probably thankfully removed from the nightmare of what AI is might be doing to algorithms. So
It is kind of nice because at least it means that we're writing about things we're truly passionate about, as opposed to just writing things for the sake of writing it, because we'd rather get more traffic on one story than that spread out over 10 stories. Because we are, there's 10 of us. We're pretty stretched thin.
Yeah. And we're going to touch on kind of you're on staff at Gon's a freelancer and what that means and how pitching is a little bit different in that way per se. But I also want to talk about just artists releasing albums and having like a release schedule, do you notice things are changing as far as like maybe not so many singles and maybe they're just going into like a more focused album campaign and that also makes your role easier because there's more maybe of a story? Or do you still see artists with that like release schedule of a lot of singles?
I think it depends on whether or not they have a label or if they're just a local artist who are emailing us and cold saying, "Hey, like we have this song coming out. We're releasing it through our own distribution." Those people sometimes they'll just release the EP right away. Other times they'll put out a single or two. It does change a little bit, but I find generally speaking, we're still sort of getting from people who are assigned to labels this is the announcement. Here's the single. Maybe we'll release another single, maybe two, and then we'll put out the EP in a couple of months. So that much hasn't changed, but generally speaking, it can be sort of a mixed bag.
That makes sense. See, I'm coming at this from like a publicist brain because that's part of what I do. So I guess how do you feel getting pitches from publicists versus like artists who are DIY to the core and are like their own acting publicist? Do you find that there's sometimes a difference? Does it influence the way you potentially choose to cover things?
I like it when artists pitch me directly. A lot of times I find the press packages that labels put together quite distracting. You know, like sometimes it could be pages and pages of bio, and like they kind of guide you towards what the aesthetics of the album is, and it's also very expositional of like some writing in the industry where if you have access to the press release and then you read an article about a band, sometimes it's just a very, very crudely paraphrased version of the press package. So it sort of becomes this kind of enclosed circle of like promotion. Um, so, and I also do prioritize if I like an independent artist, them kind of pitching me themselves. I support DIY spaces; they're very important to me. So, and I'm also very in awe of artists who are, you know, kind of hustling all of it themselves. Although, if you can jump on an indie label that can take some of the pressure off, it's probably good as well. Because you know, there's like a thing where you know you're a young artist, you're DIY, and you sort of do everything yourself. That includes like promotional and mixing and mastering, and like it's good to be self-sustained, and it probably feels very nice. But a lot of times you can feel that the music itself has become a very tertiary aspect of it because you do it, and then you have to go do all this fucking stuff afterwards. So yeah, if you can jump on an indie label that doesn't ask too much of you and can actually get you somewhere, that helps.
I
So,
think that email etiquette is a big thing for it with me. So if I have a local band that's reaching out to me and they say, "Hey, there's this thing coming out that I have. Here's the unlisted preview of it," and they'll like give me the information I need, I find it's very helpful. The one thing I don't find helpful is that sometimes these people don't have particularly good media training, and I'll get messages on my personal Instagram at 4 in the morning on a Saturday. And it's not their fault because they don't know better, but it makes it makes me less inclined because I'm just a little bit ticked off by it. But like when I get a nice email from like someone who's independent and they have like all their stuff in order, there's like a catchy subject line and they're like super kind, then that makes me want to cover that more than just like a bulk press release that every media worker in Canada has received in their inbox.
Yeah, what are some like green flags and red flags as far as like you talk about email etiquette? What are some things that make you more inclined and you see that and you're like, that's a good pitch?
I guess it's like, catchy like subject line because if I wake up and there's like 300 emails in my inbox every morning, it's hard for me to like look at every single one. So something that like bites me is really good. Taking the time to sort of look through my bylines and see, maybe is your music my bag? If it's not mine, like, did you look at Alex's? Did you look at Ali's? Did you see what our different like tastes are like? Sort of being like, hey, I saw you covered this thing. My music is FFO this thing, maybe you should cover me, giving me at least a little bit of information to work for so I'm not writing like two graphs because I need to have at least like something to work with. So giving me as much information as possible leading up to the release. I love to get an email in my inbox like the week of a release. If it's after, it's a little bit later for us to find time for coverage. Yeah, those are all things for me. What about you?
I do like concise, focused pitches. If you're not a very well-known band, like a short, focused bio is like good, especially if you're pitching for a review, because you know you do need to flesh it out a bit. If you're trying to get a feature interview, obviously, during the conversation, you can talk about like who you are, where you're from, how you started. Um, I think, yeah, a green flag for me, honestly, is a very short, focused pitch, maybe talking about like why you're pitching me to begin with. Like, just as a basic example, I wrote this really long feature tribute when David Thomas from the band Perubu died. I love that band. A week later, a band from Ohio, who are an experimental art punk band, contacted me and they said, "We love Perubu. Here's our album." It was a great album, and yeah, it was like, and the pitch was very focused. Like that's what a green flag for me would be. A red flag for me would be every fucking guitar band compares themselves to Sonic Youth in their pitches. Don't. You're not Sonic Youth. I love that band. It's one of the best bands of all time. They build their own guitars. They invented their own tuning. Nobody sounds like Sonic Youth. You suck compared to Sonic Youth. So, yeah, don't include that in your pitch. It's definitely a red flag. Where I know that you're just. Yeah. Yeah, all it tells me is that you've discovered non-standard tunings and you're super excited.
Just Sonic Youth, or are artist references still good? Is that still helpful, do you find, in this day and age? Or do you find like you kind of want to go into something and find your own reference points for when you're listening
No,
to music?
I'd say small pivot points in like aesthetics and sound are probably good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it also helps you kind of catches your eye to what you might want to listen to. You know, if like Perubu is not as ubiquitous as Sonic Youth. If someone says we love that band, we're also a band in the experimental punk realm, I'll definitely take a listen. Like this is the kind of stuff that I try to suss out on my own time of finding new music. So yeah.
That makes sense.
I think that those like markers are helpful, but like sort of what you were saying, if you're like for fans of Radiohead, it's like, come on.
Big, yeah. So I'd love to again demystify the process a little bit with like freelancing, being on staff at a publication, and I think it all comes down really to capacity. Because even though you're on staff, you're still like a small staff
Mhm.
of people at this outlet, and there are so many emerging artists and then big artists to cover too. So maybe you can both kind of walk us through what you can cover, what that bandwidth is like, and how do you say yes to emerging artists to kind of balance the needs of what needs to be covered right now?
So I guess with us, it's pretty informal. Like we just have a Slack channel where it's basically you're sort of on staff for a while. You can sort of put, I'm going to write about this in the pitches channel, essentially. And if you have like any questions as to whether or not it's something we would cover, you can talk to an editor in the sidebar or whatever. So I think that we're pretty good at collaborating in the sense where it's like somebody says, we're going to write about the Guess Who coming back on tour. And then somebody else will say, I got this thing in my inbox. I'm going to staff pick it. I thought it was really cool. So just about as combing through our inboxes where we get a lot of the same things, but there's a little bit of variance. And then we have our managing editor, Allie, who basically, if the coverage that isn't as like if we have too many like big hit news stories and not enough like streamer sort of content, she's pretty good at saying we have this and this available up for grabs. So it's not just us combing through everything. We have somebody who's sort of like helping us decide what would be good for the day and what we should cover and what it means, like what we should cover means.
Yeah, for range, for example, it all gets sifted through like a team of editors, and then it kind of gets fanned out to writers, and they can like everybody's obviously free to take what they want to take, but there is again like this moment where you know you want to cover a certain portion of bands that will drive up like readership to begin with. It's like with another magazine I work for, they just have a gigantic spreadsheet of releases, like going to from unsigned artists to big names with color codes, gently kind of guiding you towards like this is an established artist. This might be something that like would actually drive views to the websites, and then but everything gets kind of dumped in there, and it's kind of I don't know, it's kind of a nice exciting moment between contributors to like snap up and grab bands and everything else, and then yeah, and then of course, then there's always like the music you kind of assemble together and pitch to the magazine. I do find that like I write for a website called Post Trash that allows me to, in between writing reviews for albums that they want to cover, conduct like an experimental artist column. Um, and yeah, I find that great. Like it's a lot of creative freedom to like pick your own artists and interview them. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is it depends on the publication and the writer at hand. Everybody has social media and like online portfolios. I would recommend if you want to be covered, maybe checking the roster of the writers a magazine has, and trying to pitch through the magazine to the writer directly, or just seeking out the writer themselves. So yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Do you find that freelancing sometimes gives you the freedom, though, to see where an artist may fit at a different outlet versus are you kind of you struggle a bit with things that you might want to champion at Exclaim just because it may have a different voice?
Well, I only write music for Exclaim. When I freelance other places, it's like, oh, I'll write for the Toronto Star about housing or food or something. So I kind of have to stick with Exclaim when I'm thinking about entertainment coverage generally.
Mm.
Yeah, it's I'll prioritize pitching to Range and a couple of other bigger publications because I know they have more reach for artists to be exposed. If that doesn't go for one reason or another, usually it's usually not about someone being too small for the magazine. It's mostly about just space and oversaturating your website. And then I'll go to other websites. There's like an hierarchy in your mind of like how much reach the publication might have. A lot of it is also because I write a lot about niche music, like avant-garde music and freeform jazz. There's specific outlets where I will take something too. So which does take the load off of just having to kind of fling it wherever you want. So yes.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, I write freelance and I look at the style of the publication and I'm like, if it doesn't fit, like that's just sometimes it just has like a sound or it comes down to the website. But then it's also balancing, I think, like equity and the responsibility to think about local scenes. So if I'm like writing in the UK, I find that they oftentimes prioritize things in London, and I see them picking up some more things in Canada, but there's still kind of work to do there. So I guess for both of you, how do you feel about that personal responsibility of representing your local scene and having equity and coverage?
I think that just by virtue of working at Exclaim, we're all just like very like passionate about our local scene. We're completely independent, so obviously it kind of feels good to support people who are also like us in that sort of vein. Um, yeah, I if you want to speak more on it, then perhaps I can get inspired by your your
I,
thoughts.
I don't think you will. I don't. I think civic pride is fucking stupid. I think there's like an overglut of incredible music that you really have to sift through to get there. And once you get down to like something you want to write about, prioritizing something that's more regional is kind of anathema at its core. Although I understand that it's a survival mechanism as well. You have to do it. Like it's you know, this is a city of like a little bit over 1 million people. There's a lot of good bands here as well. So yeah, it's a delicate moment to balance, but internally, I will always, just, well, not write better, but like it's easier to write about something you want to write about, as opposed to you have a great band and a very good band, and the very good band is local. So, you kind of slowly get pulled towards that moment or pull yourself internally towards it. But overall, I don't think I prioritize it very much. And being a freelance writer, I obviously have more freedom to do so. Yeah.
I think that it's easy to get sucked into the Toronto bubble, especially with our whole office being based in Toronto. It didn't always used to be like this, but now we all just kind of live there. Whereas, like, I do feel like somewhat more inclined to like look beyond that, especially when we're looking for people to freelance for us. We're kind of oversaturated in terms of like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. We're always looking for people from the prairies, from the East Coast, even from the territories to write for us. And by doing that, I think we try to like even out our coverage a little bit more in those cases. Yeah.
And I see Exclaim leaning more into live show coverage
Mhm.
too. So obviously that's a great way to represent the Toronto scene. But I also see you doing festivals here in Calgary, like Sled Island, and you did Sled Island for Range this year. So yeah, I guess with that in mind, why do you think more outlets are kind of prioritizing that live show coverage compared to like deep dives into an artist profile?
It depends. Like for Exclaim, we're actually like doing a hard pivot into concert culture generally, just because like that's what we're passionate about. We hired someone specifically to do more concert listings. We're eventually going to develop an app so that people can say, okay, I want to go out on a Friday night, what's happening in the city? And all of that information is aggregated essentially. I think because, sort of what I was talking about with the AI apocalypse and stuff, people are just like more, they want to be connected and they want to know what's happening. And there's no singular place for all of that information to be aggregated, as I said. So I think it has a lot to do with that. And like, honestly, whenever, like from a social media standpoint, whenever I'm posting memes or whatever, whenever it's about a live show, it like skyrockets higher than any other music content. Like I could recycle a joke about a PBR costing $14 for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I love covering live music. It's where a lot of artists shine, and it's really where you get to the guts of what a band really is. But it is very genre dependent. Like the chasm in production value from a well-established punk band and a band playing pubs is very narrow. It's the same show, and it's the same with like genres like hip hop. Like it's just you with a microphone and like a basic rig, and you're making some things happen. But in genres like R&B and like more kind of like more curated genres, a lot of times the aesthetic kind of total package you're putting on is not something you can mount as a DIY artist. So the album at that point is probably a more indicative moment of what you want your music to be. But you still need to be able to put on a live show and pull off the material. But yeah, I generally agree that like live covering live acts is the best way. And just to kind of throw back to our previous question, like sometimes the buzz about a band, both live and just generally in an abstract way, totally fuses what the band can do. I'm fairly sure every music journalist in Canada is like on the train for a band like Piss. Like they've been making waves and all the waves are worth it. So at that point, it doesn't really matter if they're regional or anything else. Their live show and the message they're trying to relay and how articulate they are and how curated it is all kind of fusing together in this incredible moment. So at that point, all your work is really done for you. So yeah, which I was very happy to discover them at Sled Island last year.
Too.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
an incredible show and it was an incredible festival generally. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love Piss. And I think for me, working with artists, sometimes they don't even let me know that they're playing live dates, and I think sometimes they just assume, well, journalists are not going to go to the show. That's like more time consuming than just sitting down and writing a review. So they'll forget about that and just like emphasize the album or the music that's coming out. But I find that I won't even write about a band until I see them live, just because I don't really truly like understand them. I just understand them in a different way. And I get to meet the band and like experience that a little bit more. Do you find that as well in your experience with writing? Obviously, sometimes regionally it's different. Like you can't always be in Calgary or you can't always be in Montreal. Obviously, you're very active in the festival circuits. But do you find that that definitely influences you or sways your opinion in writing about a band more in depth?
Totally, because honestly, sometimes you don't get a band until you see them live. Like sometimes they sound differently in their recordings. Like it's amazing that we can all just record whatever we want from our bedrooms, but sometimes like the energy is better expressed live and vice versa. Sometimes you see someone live and you're like, I don't know. And then you listen to their music and it clicks. So I think that having both of those pieces are kind of important when you can, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. The communion between musicians is really felt and seen on stage. So even if you are pitching to a publication that's outside of where you are geographically, include short live clips into your pitch and just generally upload them on Instagram and anywhere so people can get a feel for what the music actually is. Because yeah, it's an album, even that one that you put together, is a very hermetic presentation. Live is where people know who you are as an artist, as a musician, and as a group of people.
Same with live videos. Like, do you think it's worth it for bands to record performance videos and posting them? Because sometimes, like, I think of Computer, who recently played Sled, and they just released a live performance video and it blew up. But pitches were not really landing before that. It's almost like you could see something recorded. Do you always watch live if you can online?
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather see like a clip, especially like coming from my social media background, like even just like a little 30-second clip on Reels or TikTok or whatever. I feel like I'm more intrigued by a live video of that than like somebody taking their music video and clipping it into a way that works for a media like a medium that's supposed to go viral. Whereas like I think that people are looking for organic sort of things online. They're looking for real people doing real things, and a live performance does that better than anything else.
Hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Watch the live video or like invest if you can go to like a DIY space and record a video of you
Yeah,
playing
actually,
live.
that's really the best way. Like music videos generally, I know they're sort of a tokenized package, like part of the pitching package. I personally, for myself, for my own aesthetic choice, I wouldn't put too much effort or money or hyper focus into it. Like um, a non-live music video for a band, like you never really have the budget or the capacity or the people around you unless you're signed to a proper label to make your vision come to life, and then it just sort of gets relegated into like the ether of curated but sort of okay videos on the internet. Like, yeah, clip together a live video of a bunch of live performances, or if you're able to, just like one cohesive song that you particularly like, the audience interaction and the lighting and how you look and how the band sounds.
I don't want to completely write off music videos though, because I think that aesthetics are a strong part of us sort of understanding what a band's deal is.
For the story,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It's just, yeah,
But they are so expensive.
they're expensive, and yeah, it's also sort of like yeah. Well, I mean, okay, like total aesthetic packages for me is sort of like it's like enlisting in the fucking army. You know, you go in there like to try to find out who you are, and a lot of times you don't like what you find out. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when we're even thinking about music video premieres, and I'd also like this perspective from outlets of like timeliness and being like the first to share a story and how important that is to you. Because I also just don't see music video premieres anymore. I think Range is one of the few outlets that still do them. So it's like, where does that music video even go? But is that even important to outlets anymore to be like breaking the first story about an artist? Or is it more so like all the coverage together helps each other?
I think that it's important to be first because of this sort of I know I keep talking about like aggregation and AI and all that, but basically if you're first, people are going to click on your article more often and you're going to show up higher in Google results. So that sort of thing is important from just like a data standpoint, but generally speaking from an editorial standpoint, you want to look like, our tagline is Canada's authority on music, film and comedy. If you're that authority, if you're first, it sort of gives more weight to that.
So why does Exclaim choose not to do music video premieres, if you don't mind me asking?
Honestly, I'm not completely sure beyond the fact that like we generally like to cover things that we feel very passionate about. When I was at Complex, we used to do it all the time. I think generally speaking, like I don't know if there's anything like we can report on a song as soon as it comes out, and that can be one thing versus like I don't know, like
Yeah, well, it's probably tricky to coordinate too. Like, how do you find premieres at Range? Is that something that you engage with as well?
I've never done one. I get pitched them all the time, but that's purely my choice. I think you are completely right. It's from a practical standpoint, they're very important, like being first, and there's also an internal moment that you never really lose. That you never know if that band whose video you premiered or whose song you premiered 2 years down the line might become an amazing thing, and then it sort of binds you together, and it's like a good moment.
Mhm.
But yeah, generally speaking, I think what I struggle with is the limitations of writing a premiere, which is you're usually relegated to like a 200 word, like little short up, like short write up, and then you usually like instead of talking to the artist, just email them 2 or 3 questions to kind of tether the article together. So there's not a lot of direct interaction happening with it aside from like just the aesthetics of watching the video. So it's not something I prioritize, but they are incredibly important, I would say, to publications. So
Now that you've sort of said that, I sort of think of it as in the same way where, I say that I want people to pitch me like the week up before anything sort of drops. So if that's happening and my interest is peaked, I'm going to write about it and then we're going to queue it to come out on the website at 10 a.m. or whenever the video drops anyway. So we're still first, you know?
True. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's just like not premieres the headline.
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah, I guess with that time frame, like how is too early or too late when it comes to pitching you guys? How like quick do you like to get a pitch?
Honestly, my like gold standard is like the week leading up. So say you have something coming out on a Friday, email me like Monday, Tuesday. Like the week before is fine. But I will always say like, hey, I'm interested in this. Send it to me again because I have like the memory of a goldfish. And my inbox. Please just send this back to the top of my inbox. Too early is like a month ago. Too early is like a month before. I'd say like honestly, after release is almost too late. Like unless it's the day of. We find it really hard to cover things that have already been released because we do want to be first. And beyond that, like the hype is really there when you find a song that comes out that day and we get excited about it because we're all music nerds. We all have that like release like energy. Like we love that sort of thing. So yeah, that's just me.
Yeah, I agree. There's a sweet kind of spot, like a window to pitch. After release is, yes, it's very difficult. A lot of times magazines just will, like, editors will just say no. Why would we? Because you'll write a thing about it, and then in SEO it'll just drop to page 6 because there's already like 17 fucking reviews about this thing. um, yeah, like I'd say a couple of weeks ahead. I will always listen, even if it's the day before. But unless it's something truly magical, it's like it's just undue stress because you have like so many other things to do, and because writing space is what it is, especially for a freelancer. You also have like 6 other things you're doing, like side gigs and jobs, and like devoting 3 hours to sit down and write something half cooked about something someone pitched to you in a half cooked manner is not really something that's great.
Well, and we've talked about the website a little bit and like driving traffic, but there's also so many other ways that we're consuming media. I mean, you're both in print, so the lead times are probably like way more than a week, right? When you're considering that for coverage. Or, I mean, in some regards, maybe you're pulling stuff from the site anyways to kind of circle back to that. But then also you run social media. And when I think of range, I think of like the aesthetic and the brand on socials too that are really bringing the publication to life. Lots of information, but like how has it affected your brand as far as social media goes? You are the meme queen on Exclaim. I'm always sharing those memes, and I find it really interesting how those two things intersect because sometimes social media can just be like regurgitation in a way.
What do you mean, like social media and what?
Just like, if you're posting an article, then you post the article, and it's
Okay.
not really doing anything different, right?
No, yeah.
So I guess how have you navigated and brought in social media in a unique way to increase coverage for artists?
Honestly, if I see something I like, I'll invite them to come and do the questionnaire, which is like my little TikTok series where we have like a list of 20 questions and me and like my co-producer Carly will comb through and be like, okay, we think this artist would be good at answering these. And we'll have like bigger ones, like we'll get like Tom Green or Danny Brown, but then we'll also like interview people who do like our class of series. And so we do coverage sort of like that to sort of even out the playing field. Also, instead of like posting just like a graphic with a quote or whatever, if we see a meme about an artist that kind of fits, we'll like post that and then say like go to the article at the link in our bio. But also generally speaking, I think that organic engagement on social media is just as important as driving people to the site. So sometimes you can just like make a little quirky little joke about something, and as long as it's all in good fun and with love, like that can be valuable on its own term. It doesn't always have to be about bringing people back. It's about building community.
Mm.
I joined social media a year ago because of music writing, so I'm kind of figuring it out as it goes. I found a very interesting and intermittently popular thing to do is because an interview might run like an hour, to like take clips of things that I haven't used in the article, like make a crude kind of still frame of something, and just post it. So, but I'm also kind of figuring it out as I go along. Like, to use a very funny example, I interviewed Melvins, the sludge band, last year, and I love this band. And the lead singer, King Buzzo, and the mastermind behind the band, spent the entire interview sort of airing grievances about the music industry, like labels and musicians. So I posted the first thing, which is sort of the thing I do in my interviews, which is towards like the last question I'll ask is like for a reading recommendation. So the first thing I posted was a list of books he likes that he was speaking about. And so the Melvins collabed with me on this release, and it got like 20,000 views and like 1,000 likes. And then I posted, like, collated a second clip about where he talks about Jello Biafra and the dead Kennedys. They collabed on that. And then I posted a third clip where we talk about how everybody compared the Oklahoma band Chat Pile to them when they came out. And he got intensely angry during that comparison. Because I was like, well, like, I hear I hear the Melvins name more often now because of Chatpile. And he was like, yeah, well, we fucking have 30 albums, so like, who cares? I'll try harder next time. So they didn't collab on that one. And then the next one I posted, they just removed themselves as collaborators from all the posts. So, which again, I find it like, I don't know. Again, because I'm kind of ushering myself into the age of social media and I'm 40 and I don't really care. It's kind of all funny to me, but it is like an intensely powerful tool. Like those reels that they collabed on attracted like a tremendous amount of like both followers and pitches from young bands and like everything else. It becomes this like really powerful promotional mechanism. So I am kind of polishing how I approach it, but it is definitely something worth pursuing, obviously, just in a better way.
Do you sometimes feel pressure? Like you said, you joined social media recently, and we see the rise of a lot of journalists on social media. They're not really writing. They're just kind of like talking with a microphone. And I guess it does take some scripting to be on video and talking about the music that you love, and it is a form of journalism. So would you say that you're incorporating more of that like social media influencer style of reporting with social media now more than ever?
I think we try, but I would I don't want to feel like we're an influencery sort of thing. Like generally speaking, if we see something on the site that we wrote about and I'm like, this would be good for a news TikTok, like we're the reporters anyway. So we're sort of that information is new in our head. But I see a lot of music journalisty people on TikTok try to feel I don't know. It does. There's a little bit more branded, but their own person. Whereas with us, we're talking about these things the way we talk about them in Slack. Like we're a little bit snarky. We're funny about it, and generally just talking about it as if we're music fans. Because as much as we are authoritative, that's what we are at the end of the day. I always say we're like 12 music nerds in a trench coat. So sort of gathering those voices in a way that feels real is more important to me than having a brand is Exclaim is influencing this sort of music stuff. We'll back stuff we like, but generally speaking, we just want to appear like normal music bands because I like being approachable and not pretentious with my coverage.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree. Like I got into this because I like writing about music. And I like the attention devoted by the reader to actually read something. I'm not a creator. Like you listen to something, you talk to somebody, and then you kind of carbonize it within your own taste, obviously. Because yeah, we're not, nothing that's said by any music publication is obviously gospel about anything. Yeah, it's I like writing about it, not speaking about it.
Well, we only have a few minutes left because I want to open it up for questions as well. But like one or two more. So, but I would like to let people ask questions. But when thinking about the nature of the music industry, it is very relationship based. You talked about some people will be in the DMs sometimes, which is totally valid and fair. But I guess as an artist, how do you balance, or do you have any tips or advice for how do you work together in this industry without it feeling transactional and having it feel a little bit more genuine, because this is such a relationship building industry?
I think if people are cool, you're gonna know they're cool, and you might feel a little bit more inclined to cover them if they're a good person, but you also have to pay attention to things like bias, you know? So I think it's honestly just about making genuine connections and going into it from a place of loving music and loving building community. And if you do that, the rest of it will come naturally.
Good answer.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's like I do find that even younger bands kind of give you a lot of stock answers. I think probably because they just feel like they have to. But yeah, I think if you strike up a connection, even a fleeting, because you can do it in a short amount of time, for a short amount of time with an artist, the coverage is very easy and the conversation just flows better. And yeah, it's obviously a much better moment. I think that's a struggle mostly with larger artists, and it's not because they're worse in any way, but it's because they're doing press junkets. They're talking to 70 reporters in the next 2 weeks. And so I completely understand. And I also find it really annoying when I watch interviews on YouTube, when interviewers are trying to be singular or interesting, because it's sort of like you're also trying to usurp the person you're speaking with your own personality. But establishing a free flowing conversation is always the best interviews I've had and the easiest coverage I've done.
Same here.
Yeah. And I feel like from that, all of our friends are like artists and music industry folk. And it just like all blends together, which can sometimes cause burnout because it's like, what is my life outside of music?
It's like work-life balance is really difficult, but you know, we're in it not because it's easy. We're in it because we love it.
Exactly. Can't do anything else. So speaking on being proud and just like being in this industry, is there anything that comes to mind that like you were really proud of writing, or that there are particular pieces of coverage that you're like, this makes me feel like journalism really matters and is making an impact here in Canada?
Feels so loaded. I don't know. I don't.
Well, not even like not even specific bands, but maybe just I'm saying more so in styles of coverage that makes you feel like really proud and happy to be representing music here in Canada and being the authoritative figure.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, I don't
No,
know. I'm gonna say
sorry.
no.
Giving you guys some flowers, you know?
I think the best thing that can happen to you is that you stumble upon a really great band that you feel, or like an artist that you feel are standing on the brink of something, and you get to speak to them, and the conversation is great, and you leave that interaction feeling completely happy, and very at peace. And then again, the writing is obviously very easy afterwards, and yeah, and then because where everybody's bumping around the same festivals, you get to see them afterwards and chat with them. And then if they're lucky, you get to see them kind of grow and blow up. So yeah, that's good. And I mean, I could probably list a couple of bands with whom that's happened, but like that's also a very kind of like, yeah. Anyway, it's good. Just
That's a good answer.
make art.
I always say that like the best interviews I have are never with like the most high profile people. It's always with the people who are just like chill and down to have a conversation, sort of like what you were saying. Like I think that one that comes to mind now that I've been thinking about it more is I love BB Club. They're like one of my favorite bands in Canada right now. And I interviewed them when Feu de Garde came out, and like since then it just feels like it's just been upward trajectory. Like they were on the Polaris shortlist. I championed them, and that sort of thing feels really good because they're also just like lovely people. Like they came to the office last time they were in Toronto and we like hung out and like ate donuts and like filmed a little interview, but they were like just like so happy to come and chill and yeah, sort of speaking to that community building thing that we were talking about in the last question.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, I would love to open up some folks to answer or ask questions. Sorry for how many? Rocky, and then
Well, we want to thank you because when back to the algorithm, like I noticed from our last releases, like there's so many that just took the thing I wrote in a pitch, and I was learning, and it was just like, oh my gosh, it's just the same thing everywhere, the exact same words I sent, and kind of disheartening. Like it just felt like really gross to me, like just a little unauthentic. So when I see like who are writing and who actually might listen or have an opinion, good or bad or whatever. So it's just really, really nice that that exists. So I'm curious what you think about that and what you see. What is this trend about? And is it helpful in some way in the world of in your world? Is it necessary in some way? This trend of sort of like fast pumping out. Someone sends a pitch, you just copy paste, put it, or just curious what you think as actual writers who write their own ideas, their own words down. What is this all about?
I think the trend is ending. I think that the way that we just changed our coverage to be based more on how we feel about things as opposed to regurgitating a press release is sort of speaks for itself. I hope that it's something that picks up.
I think for me, and this is good perspective for me because I'm somebody who has regurgitated press releases in the past.
Me too.
And
We've all done it.
we've all done it. And I think for me, it was the pressure of wanting to help as many artists as I can, and them just wanting that piece either to submit for grants or to share on social media so bad, and me being at capacity and saying, well, this is something. You know what I mean? It's like I might not have time to go in depth about that, but it's a website hit. They have something to point to and they can feel good. But it's to some artists that doesn't feel good, right? So for me, that's good perspective. But I think it really boils down to capacity that, when Reverie started, it was like me. And then there were more people, and then it just grows from there. And then you start getting unique writers and platforming that to some regard. So
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, something is better than nothing. That's the reality, especially if you're a starter band. But yeah, like I mean, I don't know. This profession is like everything else, every other profession in the world. You know, there's like the giant kind of vast middle ground that like kind of do just the bare minimum. And I'm not saying obviously anybody here is like the upper tier of anything, but and then some people try a little bit harder, and then yeah, but it's a push and pull, but just time,
Yeah.
and also trying to do this on your own, like starting something exciting, you know, or like being a freelancer. Like we all start on very shaky ground, and time is like the most, you know, essential, but also like the lousiest resource you have. So yeah.
It's a good learning. It's like you can't be everything to everyone. If you want to be authoritative, you have to be curated, and that's part of
Yeah,
it
and on
too.
a very, very rare occasion, um, it's worth thinking about that you got a lazy write up because that's what you deserve. Not like not everybody's worth going to the source for. So yeah.
You had a question?
Yeah, it's a very practical question. You talked about sending out your pitch like maybe 2 weeks ahead, but in the flow of everything, I'm sure goes through all your inbox. That might get lost in those 2 weeks. So is it appropriate or inappropriate to send a reminder like the day before? Hey, I sent you a pitch 2 weeks ago. Been a while. I didn't want you to miss out. Our video is launching tomorrow. Or would that be annoying?
It's not annoying. I like I sort of said, I love it when people are like reminding me like the week of. However, if you send me an email the day before and then you're following up the day after and it's still like weeks out, what am I going to do with that?
Okay, so timing is.
Yeah, if we haven't replied in like a business week, then reach out again. Like that's totally welcome. And in fact, I like really appreciate it, but just don't like I've had it before where people will like email me Monday, Tuesday, just following up, Wednesday, just following up. By the way, this is out at the end of the month. So that sort of thing I don't appreciate, but being reminded does certainly help.
Yeah, reminders are very important. Like I'm a very small time writer, and like I'm inundated with pitches. Like you just forget about stuff. Even like you know, even if you write them down, like you know, you just kind of all of it runs away from you. So reminders are very important. Um, if you receive two responses to a reminder that says "I'll nudge my editor in chief," it means that it's not happening. So yeah.
And with that timeline in mind, still have your assets done way before a week, because I always feel bad emailing Sydney the day before and then having to follow up the day of, just because I didn't have the assets to pitch something until the day before. It's like
Yeah,
the
that's
more
very important.
time that if you have somebody representing you on your behalf, or you as an artist to feel organized and have your shit together, then you can start plotting out those timelines to properly pitch a
Yeah,
reader
like
that needs
high res album covers, a couple of photos with photographer credit, so you don't have to hunt you like so I don't have to hunt you down for it. Like the easier you make it, because on occasion you'll also just immediately fall in love with something someone pitches you, and you just write it right away, and the magazine has space to do it. And so then having to go back and like hunt down all these little tidbits of how to deck out an article is, you know, it becomes a thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it should
I
be
love an unlisted YouTube link too. It's like my favorite thing in the whole world.
yes.
Because it makes us feel special too. Yeah.
Exclusive. Any other questions? Okay.
Great.
Hopefully that was helpful. And you had some of those questions that and maybe were in your head answered today. But of course, you can come up and chat with us, and we're happy to dive in a little bit more if so. But I guess we'll leave space for the next panel. We're finishing right on time. So go us.